You guys know what time it is. I just finished another book. Catcher in the Rye. Yes, I was never told to read it in high school, so I read it late as a 21-year-old. But what a book. I have to say, what a book. I read it because, first of all, it was time. And second of all, a professor of mine mentioned it and was like, I don't like The Great Gatsby, but I love Catcher in the Rye. And I was like, I gotta give it a read, I guess. And I might have been a different person if I read this in high school, I'm not gonna lie. The main character, so the story follows, again, I don't want to give a full spoiler, but it's Holden, the main character, and he just got expelled from school, like a boarding school, and he's decided to, it's like a Saturday, and he has until Wednesday when it's time for him to go home, where the school lets out for winter break, and that's when he would tell his parents, that he got expelled and all of that. And he's just having a pretty lonesome kind of night and decides the best thing to do is for him to grab all his cash and pack all his things and just spend a couple days in New York City by himself before he has to go home and, be confronted by the reality of flunking out of school and his parents and all of that. And it is just like, I think it's like 2.5 days maybe that happen, like maybe 3 days, and so much happens, obviously, because he's a 16-year-old boy let loose on the town with, it's the 50s, so he has, $200 or so, $100, which is, a fortune, and this motherfucker just keeps spending and spending and spending on bunch of different experiences, whether it's drinking, buying food, going to hotels. Again, I don't want to give a full spoiler, but I'm just gonna say that this is one of the most relatable characters I have ever read about. Just his constant angstiness and most relatable teenage character in particular. Because I felt like I was a lot like that as a teenager as well, where I felt a lot of huge disconnect from people around me, and I felt like it was almost like everyone else was in on it and I was out of it, and I just didn't understand what was going on. And that kind of lack of understanding makes you see people as they're not being real, or that you're kind of being forced to do things, which I feel like is such a universal teenage experience, just feeling in the outs and wanting that independence. And it deals a lot with, I feel loss of innocence in particular. He experiences a lot of things that if you're a mother reading this, you're like, God, this poor child, being exposed to all these different things that they're gonna affect his psyche. And I feel like even though it was in the 50s, it still holds up very well, I would say. And what I particularly like is how isolated the character is. And again, that's part of one of the main themes of loneliness. He mentions a lot how depressed and lonesome he feels, and even when he's around people, because again, he never feels that connection to them. He only likes two people really, his little sister. He only really likes his little sister, his brothers. One of his brother passed away. I believe, not his oldest, but older brother. And, he brings him up a lot, and maybe he won't, flat out say, how much he misses him, but he'll call for him and talk to him whenever he's alone, which is, such a sad thing to see. And the way it's written is also so amazing, because it does sound like a teenager is kind of talking and rambling in your ear. It sounds like he sat down and wrote it all in one go, you know what I mean? And yet the words are so powerful, the way it starts and the way it ends. I really love, I'll read to you the last line, because it's and again, it's him telling all these stories about people he met, and a lot of times the people he met, he'll say oh, like, this phony guy, or, like, I don't really like this guy, like, this guy annoys me, or whatever. And then at the very end, he says, I don't know what I think about it. Oh, so his brother asked him, like, what he thinks about. He told his brother that, all the chronicles he went through, everything that he told you on the book, and his brother's like, asked him, like, what he thinks about it. And he says, if you want to know the truth, I don't know what I think about it. I'm sorry I told so many people about it. All I know is I sort of miss everybody I told about. Even old Randler and Aki, for instance. I think I even miss that goddamn Maurice. It's funny. Don't ever tell anybody anything. If you do, you'll start missing everybody. And I feel like that, in and of itself, also encapsulates kind of like the teenage experience. Because as I'm getting older, at my elderly age of 21 years old, I find myself doing something which I never expected to, which is look back at my time in like high school and middle school and kind of miss it. And miss the people that I used to hate seeing every day, or that, again, I felt like were also like fake. I feel like the whole time you're a teenager, or when you're kind of going through that angsty phase, all you want to do is grow up so you can forget all these people and all these things. And then as you get older, you can't help but wonder, like, like, what is that person doing now? Like, and think about how much freedom you used to have. I mean, obviously you don't have the freedom to do whatever you want. Obviously he kind of does whatever he wants in this book. But I mean, in general, as a teenager, you have limitations because you're not an adult quite yet. And especially if you don't really have a job and aren't independent in that way. And so I feel like when you're young, all you wish is for that independence, to be away from all these people that you're forced to see every day, like at school or wherever. And you crave that independence, and then you get there, and all I think about is like, damn, I used to really just like hang out with my friends all day. And that was my day. I would go to school, maybe hang out with friends, do homework if I had to, get up to some fuck shit, and the consequences weren't really all there. And that's the freedom that I feel like you do miss as you get older. And I feel like that's the freedom that was encapsulated so well in the book. And it really does feel like you're diving into the mind of a teenager. And particularly, like, the character, I felt like I could see not just myself, but other people that I grew up with and that I kind of went through this phase with in the character. There's certain aspects of it that hold up so well. And again, it's like, even though it was in the 50s, it's like the same thing with, like, Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. Like, yeah, it was different times, different things happened, but the same ideas and themes are there. The same way that, kids are and teenagers are will always kind of be the same. Hopefully, which might get me to a whole nother tangent, because I feel like now, with technology and all these things, I feel like kids are losing a lot of these timeless, kids being kids type of things, because I feel like people are more and more isolated nowadays in a way. And not the same way this character is isolated. Isolated, I mean, in the sense of people don't want to go outside. That's what I mean. I don't mean isolated in the sense of wanting to be alone and not really go out with the idea of, like, meeting people and talking to people, but you're still going out, you're still doing all these things. I feel like now people are more isolated in the sense of, like, why go outside? Which can get me into a whole nother tangent about Fahrenheit 451, but I digress. I actually never fully did a review on Fahrenheit 451 after I finished it, nor 1984. Nor Animal Farm. So I might get into those later. But this is about Catcher in the Rye, so I'll stay on topic. I just really love this book, honestly. It might be one of my favorite books that I've read this whole year. And I feel like it was like such perfect pacing and such perfect story that, like, I want to know more, no less. And I feel like, that's the hallmark of a good book, I feel like, or of a great book. Because I feel like sometimes you read a good book and you're like, I want to know more about these characters. I want to dive into this world more. But I feel like with a great book, you just close it and you're like, yeah, that's it. That's it. You know? Yeah. And I remember my professor who recommended this book, he's a film professor, and mentioned how some people, like some directors, have tried to make this book into a movie, and how it's just one of those books that it's just like you have to kind of read it to fully get the experience, because again, the experience is being inside this boy's mind and seeing yourself through him. And sometimes that can get lost in movies, you know, because you're so stuck seeing just the visuals. And, you know, I feel like I'm a big believer that if it's a good book, it's meant to just be a book. If it's a good movie, it's meant to just be a movie. And so I'm glad this book kind of stayed safe in that way. Yeah. 10 out of 10. I think everyone should read this book. Even if you're not a teenage boy, you know. Kind of goes back to the idea of my last video about boyhood, but, you know, it's great. So, Catcher in the Rye, 10 out of 10. I want to read more J.D. Salinger books now, particularly Perfect Day for a Banana Fish. I don't think that's a book, though. I think it's just a shorter story. Yeah, it's a short story. Because I watched the show Banana Fish, and now I want to know about banana fish. I know the general idea, though, of, like, the fish, or, like, people... I guess I don't know the general idea, because I can't tell you right now. But it has to do something with drowning bananas and fishes. And going mad. Can't wait.